In the words of Lewis McGlade, hello and welcome back to round 4 of the Skip Barber eRace series. This week, we are at Silverstone Grand Prix out in England. So we're still over the seas, not in the US. And we have lots of racing here. Today, we're going to be starting out with qualifying and then going into 2 races. The first race sets you up for your second race, and ultimately where you finish in your second race is where you will finish in the points. My name is Elliot Bishop. I am here joined by Ed Trevelyan Johnson. I am very excited. Ed, how do you feel today?
Feeling pretty great. It's nice to have Skip Barber back in the UK again. Hopefully chuck away all these guys' passports and we can keep them. Over on this side of the channel, on the Atlantic, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Yeah, you just keep all of the talent over there on your side of the pond there. So, yeah, we have quite a bit of racing. I know that Ed actually just came off of another 24-hour stint, a 24-hour of Le Mans, and he is joining us here. So he's been on a long schedule, but lots of racing has been going on in the world. Lots of e-racing, that is. And we are here for another round of the Skip Barber eRace series, as we said. So yeah, lots of racing action to get into. And one of the main storylines that we've been tracking from series to series and race to race here in the Skip Barber eRace series is the story of Johnny Guindi, who is here on the screen. He is a 6-race-in-a-row winner, has pretty much dominated every single stage of the series. And as we see him on screen, he is currently wearing that number 1 plate yet again. In this series, you qualify during the week. There is no place that is set in stone. So regardless of how you do the week before, you still have to qualify and set a fast time to be able to afford a position to race on Sunday. So the format ultimately works where Skip Barber, they charge a $20 fee to enter. And then the top 20 times during the qualifying sessions during the week, the hot lap sessions rather, those top 20 times ultimately afford you a position and a number plate to race on the weekend. So Johnny Guindi has only not had that number 1 plate one time, and that was last week, but he still ended up finishing in first place regardless. So Johnny Guindi completely dominating across the board, but we've seen a few people, Thomas Cadwalder, Nathan Saxon, and Sven de Vries, being able to show up and put a little bit of pressure on Johnny Guindi. So this track, one of the favorites for many racers. I know Lewis McGlade told me that was his favorite track. I'm not sure about Ed, but definitely not one of my favorites because I'm just not very fast on it. But I know a lot of drivers really, really love this track. So we might actually see the likes of Cadwalder or Sven de Vries actually bringing it to Johnny Guindi. And I guess we'll see with how these qualifying times come in, how much further off they are from him.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of basically consolidate your point about Johnny Guindi. He's really been this kind of unbreakable figure in this series so far. There have been a few people who have been snapping at his heels, like Sven de Vries and Thomas Cadwalder, but they haven't quite got there. I mean, we had, I believe it was 2 rounds ago at Spa, we had Sven de Vries leading one of the races for most of the race, but Johnny got there in the end. He's been he's won every race. I really want to see someone take it to him one of these rounds.
Yeah, and like you said, back at Spa, Sven was in the lead for, I think it was about five laps or so. So he was able to actually put Johnny Guindi back and ultimately put him in a position where he had to battle with the pack that is currently, that typically fights for second. And what we've seen in this series, just in general, because all of these drivers are driving the exact same Ford EcoBoost Skip Barber, I think it's Formula Skip Barber car. They ultimately have the exact same setup, the exact same amount of power. And ultimately what it comes down to is just being incredibly consistent, incredibly fast, and then also avoiding as much traffic and contact and battles as possible back in the field. But we've seen the battle for second be, 5 cars within half a second of each other. So there's really not a ton of room for error with a lot of these drivers. So what I would really like to see is if someone, puts the pressure on Guindi early in the session, puts him back into a position where he has to battle, for second or third position, and that person in first place then just has to run away and hope that he doesn't, that he doesn't get caught by Guindi. Because what we saw at Spa with Sven is that, obviously he was leading the race for 5 laps or so, and he had, I believe it was about a 3-second lead or a 2.5-second lead, and then all of a sudden, regardless of that, Johnny Guindi ended up catching back up to them, or back up to Sven. So I wonder how that affects just the mentality if you're leading the race, knowing that Guindi does have that closing power. He has that speed that he ultimately can catch up, and regardless of how much of a gap that you have in that lead position.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you gave excellent context to what we're seeing here, and really the reason why we're touting Guindy's name so much, why we're bringing him up so much. These cars are identical. They've got identical setups. So there are a few skills that removes one variable basically. So all of these guys have the same virtual machinery. There are a few skills that you need really to get it to where, if you're good at them, you need to be good at all of them to get where Guindi is at the moment. And that includes obviously just raw pace, racecraft, using your brain on track, how you're going to manage the tires. So just all brain kind of things, but also just being able to set up your hardware correctly, just making sure you've got the game running smoothly. So you've got your wheel settings correct and all that kind of thing. I also wanted to bring up that this is actually one of the few tracks where VR may come in as a bit of an advantage, because there is a corner and it's just at the beginning of the track. So I believe it is turn 3, village corner. Yes, no, turn 4. It's an incredibly tight corner, and it helps so much. And this is something I learned when I did my stint of endurance racing. I'm afraid I'm mostly retired now, even from virtual racing. But it helps me. I got a VR headset, and suddenly I was able to hit that apex perfectly every single time. So that's something to watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you're talking about peripherals and things like that, obviously a VR headset for a long stint it is becomes challenging at the end of the day. Nowadays, with the current generation of VR headsets, you have obviously more pixels per inch. I think that's what it's measured by, but the amount of resolution that's in the headset itself has increased. And I know that I used to get it's a bit jarring when you wear a VR headset sometimes, but definitely the advantage of being able to look into corners and turn your head, because most of these drivers are playing on sims where it's just like, if you were going to play CSGO or any other game where it's just a screen, in front of you, right? And you don't really have the opportunity to look into a corner when it's coming up. I think that Cadwalder's coming up to this corner that you're talking about now. So you can ultimately see that it's almost an entire 180-degree, left-hand turn. And the more that you can turn your head, the more that you can see that exit apex. And that's really, for most drivers, they're focusing on where they want their car to end up when they turn into a corner. So they're looking to where they want their car to come into position, and typically it's like an outside curb or it's a marker that they focus on, and then ultimately they just steer into the corner and then release the steering wheel up until a point that they hit that mark, and they just track that point with their eyes. So, for a lot of drivers today, we might see a bit of blindness going into that corner, not really having the opportunity to look deep, to look at that angle. But that's definitely, a bit of a challenge with particular hardware setup. So we'll see if anyone really has a way to combat that, or we might see a few drivers that are driving in VR that have a bit of an advantage there. That might actually be something that we see as we continue through this qualifying session. Even with 2 minutes left in qualifying. Currently, Johnny Guindy's still sitting in first. We've spoke to his praise, but Sven de Vries coming into second position. And like I mentioned just earlier, the number plates that you're seeing on the left side of the screen, so the in blue is their current standing. So Sven de Vries actually qualified fourth in the hot laps, and now he's sitting in second, which is actually quite a bit of an improvement. And another person that I would really like to focus on as we go into this is the 5 car of Gomez Jr. Gomez Jr. has been just off the pace, just so slightly away from contention. He's always been sitting in about 4th place. We've seen him, basically battle it out. We've seen him run very fast laps, and he's been in contention for podium positions this entire series. And one thing that really this Skip Barber team brings to the table here with this series is that as soon as you're in the top 20 qualifiers and you get into this, you're top 20 in the hot laps, and you get into this qualifying session, into the race session, you ultimately get to work with Skip Barber and develop your racecraft. They work one-on-one with every single one of the drivers in this series to help them improve their abilities. They're giving them feedback. They're talking to them about the car, and they're giving them a real-world experience, which ultimately we've seen help a lot of these drivers that started lower on the grid and develop while the season's been going on. So guys like Johnny Guindi, Cadwalder, De Vries, Gomez Jr., Saxon, Jablonski, Kersetter, we've seen them in pretty much every single round of this. So they've had a lot of time to work with these guys with the Skip Barber team and develop their racecraft. So they have a bit of an advantage having qualified for every single one of these sessions, because they've ultimately gotten more time with the Skip Barber team. And we really see that as they've been incredibly consistent, and maybe even more consistent than when they first entered this series.
Yeah, indeed. I was just looking at Saxon down in 5th. Maybe he hasn't spent enough time with the instructor this week. His number is 3. He should be higher.
Yeah, absolutely. He it seems that either he dropped back just a little bit, maybe had a few issues this morning. Maybe it's part of a setup, but ultimately that could also fall into Gomez Jr. just doing a little bit better and hopping up, and maybe him and De Vries got a little bit quicker all of a sudden, because they are within 3/10, which isn't a ton of time, but in racing is quite a bit. So I think that Saxon will have to take it back to the drawing board on that one. But I think the good news is we've seen with a lot of the drivers, in Saxon being one of them, we see them in qualifying sometimes not doing as well as their initial session, but then all of a sudden during the races, they kind of hit their groove. They figure out exactly where their brake markers are. Potentially they follow behind a few of the faster drivers. We've seen Sven de Vries be able to, tow behind Guindi and really just identify where those braking spots are and where the apex marker, like literally just figuring out the ins and out of the track from one of the best drivers in this series. And then they start to develop through the session. So all of a sudden, the first race that we're about to see ultimately ends up being a bit of a learning session for these guys to really just hit the pace and find their markers, find the momentum that they need. And then all of a sudden, race 2 is this really consistent battle for the top 3 spots. As we're going into the next session, it is worth mentioning that we have, I believe, a few. Do you know if the Fortan brothers ended up coming back for this session? Because I know that they were in the first 2 Skip Barber series, and then they didn't make the last session or the last round because of the 24-hour that took place the day before. So they couldn't be on a 36-hour stint. I don't think that they're here this week, though.
They're not here this week.
Okay.
They're I wish they could be, but they're absolutely spent. They've done 2 24-hour races in 2 weekends. But I mean, check out that lap from Guindi. He's the only guy in the 203s. It's over 2/10 ahead of the next guy. So this is this is what you need to do in this series. I mean, that gap, from 1st to 4th, it's not big, but these cars are identical. The gaps are going to be small.
Exactly.
So it's that extra tiny little bit. And the more time these guys spend with Eric Powell, our instructor here, is all the better.
Yep. And with that being said, we're going to go to a break, and we will be back with race number 1 just after this. Welcome back to the Skip Barber eRace series here at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. My name is Elliot Bishop. I am joined here by Ed Trevelyan-Johnson, and we are going into race number 1. It's going to be Johnny Guindi in the number 1 number plate, holding the first spot in the row here while they get ready to go for race number 1. The lights are coming on. Johnny Guindi has to hold this position. Will anyone be able to bring it to him for race 1? As the lights go out, we're going down the front straightaway just across where the pit boxes are, and it looks like, I believe, that Sven de Vries going to the inside. He might actually pick up a few positions here as he's going to collect another car. I think that was Sven de Vries, if I remember correctly, but unfortunately he's going to drop back just a little bit, and I think that was actually Kerstetter, as there's a few positions being changed there. It just looks like he ended up bumping the tires of another driver, and I think that we saw a bit of an off just back behind. I'm not exactly sure who that was either. I think that might have been Scattini in a body. But now, as we're coming down the front straightaway, it's going to be not straightaway, but it's going to be Cadwallader just in behind Johnny Guindi. So if Cadwallader can sit here and keep his eyes on Johnny Guindi, we might actually see a bit of a contention for that number 1 plate. And we might see a bit of an opportunity for Cadwallader to take the position from Guindi. Now going back for the battle for 3rd position, this is going to be Jablonski, and just behind him is going to be de Vries. So it wasn't actually de Vries that caused that issue. He was usually running the teal. A bit of bumping there, yeah. Sven de Vries typically runs that teal back wing, so that's why that was a bit of confusion. But now it looks like he's in the 4 car with the black back wing, so I'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, de Vries goes inside and he's able to pass Jablonski into 3rd position, and now Sven de Vries, who we've seen having an opportunity in a few other sessions, being able to keep it close to Johnny Guindi. All he has to do is close that gap between him and Cadwallader in 2nd place, and now Saxon is looking to the inside. He might actually have an opportunity here to pick up a few positions, putting himself inside of the 7 car of Garcia. Garcia is going to drop back, and now Saxon goes through.
It's such a great corner, that corner, Stowe. You just sling it in and it grips up. Yeah, just tons of dives. These guys are slowing each other up, though. They need to work together to get to the front group, because Cadwallader and Guindi are just walking away with it at the moment. Look at that gap, 1.5 seconds in front of de Vries.
Yeah, and we've seen in every single race, and I mentioned this back in the last round, Johnny Guindi typically within the first few corners ultimately ends up finding himself half of a second between himself and the rest of the pack, even if there's not a battle going on. Is Garcia with a massive move there. He actually rides it around the outside, and he looks to the inside of, I think he picked up a spot on short. So now he's going to find himself in 6th position. I bet you this guy's having a ton of fun, as he's been finding a ton of passing opportunities, as we've seen him going up and down in the order. So him and Short, and now Saxon in a battle for, it looks what is contention for a top 5 position. So Garcia absolutely throwing it in the, or actually on the outside. And now he's going to be looking to the back end of the 3 car of Saxon, who we were mentioning was a bit slower in the qualifying. And Saxon definitely doesn't want to drop any further behind the position that he earned in 3rd position. And now we're seeing a bit of a formation lap from what it looks like, with 4 cars all side by side. But that is going to be a body looking for an opportunity. I think that he's looking on Masael to the inside, but now he might ultimately be able to get the slipstream and look for a tow here. No, he's going to tuck his nose back in behind and ultimately wait for a little bit later here on the track. Not really much of an opportunity there, but as you can see, look at that little bit of an opportunity. Whoa. I think, I'm actually not entirely sure who that was. Spheres, potentially.
Spheres, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, Spheres goes off. I'm not entirely sure what happened there. Maybe he got a little too tight on the brakes as he was just getting in behind the car ahead of, I think that was Masael, but a body looking to the inside on the 12 car. Unfortunately, not really finding the opportunity there, but the car ahead is just going to lose a bit of grip, and a body was looking to pass him on the inside, and he just collected the front end. So that was just a bit of an unfortunate situation, as Fernandez and a body found a bit of an issue. Someone's pulling into pit there. I'm not sure if they... Do you actually? Ooh, Fernandez now cooking the tires. Do you know if they have simulation damage on here?
There is a little bit of damage on, yes. I believe. But that Fernandez spin just there, that's a really good example of something I wanted to bring up. So these guys they have to manage the tires. They're on a knife edge all the time. If you slide, if you spin, you've knackered the tires for the rest of the race. So you've got to be so careful. These guys are using their brains at 100% the whole way through this race. And that's why they're going to be using each other to maybe save a little bit of tire life, try and get some free air when they can. If you remember some of the past races, you'll see that people like De Vries or maybe Cadwalder try to make their moves early on Guindi, and that's partly because Guindi starts then just making his gap, and look, he's already done that. He's over a second. But it's because, it's this tire management. These guys have got to think about that the whole way through this race, side by side through cops. Wow, that's brave.
Yeah, Garcia, again, he's going to find a position on short, putting himself into 6th position. And now him and short have been battling quite a bit. And now you see that there's quite a bit of a gap between Garcia and Saxon. That was a battle that we were watching before where all three of them were stacked up. And now Garcia and short are now 2.5 seconds back behind Saxon. So that was exactly what you were talking about. Not only is tire management important, but focusing on the long-term mission, right? Obviously, this race is where you end up in this race is where you're going to start the next race. So ultimately, where you finish is where you're going to start on the front straightaway, and the better position you can get, ultimately, the better. But it's more important for these guys to look at the long-term goal here instead of making, having a battle for 6th position. These guys should be looking for an opportunity to catch up to the car ahead, because every single time that you see I believe it's the 16 car this is Spheres now. Every single time that you saw the Garcia or Short battling, they're losing time to the car ahead, and now it's a 3.5 second gap. So they lost another second within a lap. And when you're looking at the long-term goal of ending up in a position, where you're contending for a top 5 position for the start, it doesn't really make sense to be battling like this. But these guys are all looking for one position, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. Look at the defensive line Garcia's taking. He's literally in the grass on the opposite side of the track. Or sorry, that's not Garcia, that's Short. So Short doesn't have the entry to this corner, and look at how much wider Garcia has as they're coming into this right-hander now. And I guarantee you that Short's tires are going to be completely covered in dirt and rubble and all of the marbles that come off of the rubber marbles that come off of the tires. It's just not a line that you want to take, and he's defending for every single position.
Be side by side again.
Yep.
Oh, okay. He backed out of that a little bit. Wise choice. Yeah, I love these onboard views. It really lets you get inside the head of these guys, particularly the one where we see back from the rear wing. You see the guy behind. You see exactly how he's thinking, how he's sizing up the driver ahead, how he's going to get past him. And what you were saying earlier. Yes, I agree with you. You want to be managing your race, as I was saying earlier. But also, you've only got a 15-minute window, so you've got this predicament. This is what's so perfect about this series. It's just that awkward little kind of time frame. You've got a 15-minute race where you got to save something, but you also got to get the job done. You've got to start making your moves.
Yep. Yeah, I think what's crazy to me, right? Imagine if Johnny Guindi, had a bit of a mistake and he had to fight his way up through the pack. Every single position is a battle. These guys are not letting anyone through. Like, Short is battling with Garcia, defending 6th position, which is, and with all of these cars, ultimately the speed is the exact same. The top speed that they're able to obtain comes down to how they drive the car, right? When you come out of a corner into straightaway, you want to carry as much speed as possible, because there's not a turbo booster or some sort of DRS system where you can drop your back wing and find some, a bit of extra speed. So in this series, like you're mentioning, every spot matters. But if you're back in the row, the starting position is so important, because if you're further back in 7th or 8th position, you have to fight 6 or 5 people ahead of you for every single inch of the track. And when that happens, when you're battling, it starts to spread out the field, and then ultimately you're battling for 5th position instead of an opportunity, working with the car ahead for you guys
Indeed.
both to end up fighting for, a top 5 position.
These guys all need to gang up on Guindi. They need to form a syndicate every week, and they need to be like, yeah, let's go and get Johnny, because someone needs to dethrone him if anyone's going to have a chance of taking this title from him. Nuts. We missed that. I wanted to talk when the rear view, the looking back over the rear wing camera was on. But I think it just gives you such a good view of, we were right in the head of Garcia. He was having a look here, having a look there. And these cars have relatively low power, but they've got relatively decent aero. So it's a lot about, look at this slipstream. It means everything, this slipstream. It means, how they load up the tires, how they position. You can do a lot. You can manipulate someone ahead of you just by how you position yourself, how you get inside their head when you're behind them. It's incredible. And these guys are really using all of these tricks. They're putting on such a great show for Skip Barber. These guys, this is the reason why these guys are on your screens right now. I also just wanted to do a quick shout out to the guys who, everyone who's watching on various platforms, on Skip Barber YouTube and Facebook and UMG TV and the Race YouTube channel. There have been a lot of races going on in the last few weeks, but yeah, Skip Barber, really one of the best around at the moment, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the opportunity for these guys to, every single week you could see an entire new row of drivers. I think that's the most interesting thing to me. This isn't your typical series where you earn your spot and then you run the series. Every single spot and every single position for these guys, they have to battle 100% of the time. They have to battle through the practice sessions. They have to battle, ultimately to get the top times to be able to start. It's a huge advantage to be able to start at a higher position. Ooh, and Jablonski, after a bit of battling, just back behind, picked up just a little too much dirt, and now he's going to be dropping off the back end of Saxon. And for Garcia, he's going to be a bit happy about that, as the gap between him, which we were mentioning, Garcia and Jablonski earlier, was about,
here it is again,
3 seconds, and we're back on that back end view. Now Garcia looking back. Typically we are looking at Short's position, but now Short is in a position now where he's going to be looking for this draft. And for anyone that's not really versed with racing, what this is when you get behind a car at high speeds like this, ultimately you're towed behind the car ahead. And it's almost, imagine if you're pulling a trailer, but your trailer has an engine inside of it. It's easier to overtake if you get into that draft. You ultimately don't have enough air, or you don't have as much air resistance ahead of you, so you're able to go much quicker than the car ahead. And he's doing a bit of the work of splitting the air, the wall of air in front of you. So now Short wasn't able to actually find it on the straightaway. He wasn't able to gain that advantage. But look at how close he is to the car ahead of Garcia. He's all
over him.
Yeah, he's all over him. And not only that, but maybe the fact that Short didn't go to the inside of Garcia. Look at the gap between them and Jablonski. Now a single lap of them not battling, and Jablonski making a small error, and now the sight for, I believe that's position number 5, is just in front of him, as Short's going to go to the outside now of turn number 3, I believe. And this is the corner that you were talking about, Ed. It's completely blind. Look at this. You have no idea where the exit is. You ultimately just have to rely on your...
Look at his exit.
Whoa. He might cross back over here on Garcia. Yeah. But yeah, you have absolutely no view of that corner.
Indeed. And just, going back to what we were saying earlier, and you mentioned a good point with Jablonski. He's got dirty tires now. So he's going to be falling ever further back into their clutches. So this could become a 3-way battle pretty soon, with just over 1 minute to go. It's getting exciting. It always is in these races, Elliot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with these longer tracks, it starts to make you question how much longer you have left in the session, right? Because with this, typically in racing, you have a set amount of laps, right? Unless it's something like endurance. So you have like 10 laps to race. And here we have a 15-minute clock. When that clock comes down to 0, if you're across the line, you just have to finish that lap. Ultimately, as soon as it hits 0, whenever you hit the checkered line, the finish line, that's the end of the race if you're the race leader, if you're Johnny Guindi. So these guys don't know if they have another lap left in them. And now at this position, what you're talking about with Jablonski cooking his tires, he just has to maintain, for 1 or 2 laps, he has to cool his tires down. He has to, ultimately get the grip back in But for Short and Garcia, they're battling back behind. All that they need to do is work together so that by the time that they catch up to Jablonski, they're not in a position. And I think Guindy's coming across the line here. So we're going to have one final lap now. But what I was saying is that they need to work on maintaining their tires just behind Jablonski so that when they catch up to them, they have a fighting chance. Because what you're seeing now, going too wide, coming across the line, they're going to finish one more lap here. So that's just under a minute, I believe, the lap times, if I'm correct there. Based on what we just saw, maybe it's closer to a minute. But ultimately, we're on our final lap, but these guys really need to maintain their tires so they have a fighting chance, because now you see Jablonski back at a 3-second lead because these guys have been battling behind. So maybe if those guys... Oh, and Garcia just losing his rear end there just on the exit of the corner that you were talking about. I'm not entirely sure. I think that's turn number 5, if I'm right. Or 4.
It's called Village.
Village. On Village, you have absolutely no view of that exit. So if your tires are cooked, you're in a position where you really have to, recollect yourself, and you might not be able to save it on the exit, not being able to see that position. Do you know, Ed, what drivers are actually driving with VR headsets?
I do not. I was speaking to Dean Dibdal and his father Richard. He's just 13, so it's an amazing opportunity.
Wow.
You know, these guys of all ages are joining, and you know, Dean had speed. He got in, so good on him. And he's using a VR headset, definitely. I think we got him to use a monitor for his instructor session because his stream was a bit fuzzy. But he's definitely using VR today, as far as I know.
Awesome. So Johnny Guindi, definitely not using VR from what we know, is going to be maintaining his first position in first place, and he's going to be coming across the line here. And as we were talking about the very beginning of the race, this is going to be 7 races in a row for Johnny Guindi in the Skip Barber eRace series that he has won in a row. He has been completely undefeated. And look at Cadwalder now. 3 seconds back behind, and then the gap between him and DeFries is 5 seconds. So for those guys, they really need to keep it close to Johnny Guindi and try not to battle to be able to dethrone this guy and really have an opportunity. And now we're coming across the line. Short's not going to have an opportunity, as Garcia is actually going to be able to hold that position as they were battling quite a bit.
Garcia got ahead. He got him.
Yep, he got him. So he was able to pass Short. Garcia and Short were fighting pretty much that entire time. And as we saw, Kerstetter is going to be able to hold off Schettini, who I believe Schettini dropped back quite a bit. So he actually picked up 3 or 4 or 5 actually positions, because I think he was back in 15th after the contact at the beginning of the race. So good on him. And unfortunately for Gomez Jr., he's going to find himself all the way back in 15th. Maybe a bit of traffic, maybe some issues. I think he was actually the car with the teal back wing, I believe, that had that collision at the beginning of the race. So he is going to have to look to the front of the pack from the very back of the row. He's going to have a great view of the rest of the field. And really, I keep patting him on the back here. Gomez is a very fast driver, and he's been looking for his consistency here in this series. And I really want to see him bring it to the front of the pack, because we've seen him incredibly fast. He's like the likes of Sven de Vries, where they're able to start in the back of the field and end up closer to the front. So they're able to pick up 5 or 6 or 7 positions in the field when they are racing. So if they can keep that pace closer to the front of the field, maybe they're going to have the pace to, bring it to a guy like Johnny Guindi or Cadwalder, who are holding the top 2 positions.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate racing put down, isn't it? You'll have a great view of the field.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Look, I had half an eye on Guindy's gap pretty much throughout that race, and yeah, he kept it at about 1.5 seconds for most of it. But I think in that last bit, he just flexed his muscles a little bit and just eked it out to another. I think it was 3.5 seconds all in all. So,
yeah,
this guy, he's a phenomenon.
Yeah, once you find that consistency, all that it takes is just be like, all right, I'm going to push a little bit harder in these few corners and see what I can make up. And for Guindi, that worked out. And now we're going to go to a quick break. And when we come back, we will be going into race number 2 of round 4 of the Skip Barber eRace series just after this message. All right. We are here and we are back for round 4 of the Skip Barber eRace series. We just finished race number 1, and Johnny Guindi has found himself 7 race wins in a row, completely dominating this entire series, and a lot on the line for these guys. Ed.
Yeah, I just wanted to, before these lights go out, hopefully I'll get it in time. I'm not sure I will, actually. Maybe we'll wait.
we'll wait until the lights come off here.
I got a point to make, but let's see the race start first.
Yeah, let's see the race start, as Johnny Guindi is going to be starting in first position, as Cadwalder is in second position, just back behind him. Good start for Cadwalder. He's going to be able
inside.
He might be actually have the opportunity here, as he's driving an incredibly defensive line against Johnny Guindi. Johnny Guindi's out there in the he was stuck to the outside, but now he's going to have the inside for the next few corners. Actually, he's going to have the outside here for this, and he might actually fall just behind Cadwalder. And if I believe that Sven de Vries in the 4 car, if he can bring it to Guindi here, they might be able to trap him here and prevent Guindi from running away here in the first few corners. And now Johnny Guindi at an incredibly defensive line.
This.
He wants the inside.
Elliot, look, we were talking about working together last race. What do you think's happening between Cadwalder and de Vries? I reckon they've had a couple of words with each other. They're like, yeah, we need to put Guindy's back as far as we can. Let's if whoever's in front, or if I'm in front of you, I'll give you the slipstream. I'll move over so that you get the slipstream and not Guindi. I just also, we were talking about working together last race, but let's put you and me in this race. Let's say we qualified. It's never going to happen. I'm never going to be fast enough. I'm sure you would. You've done a bit of racing in real life, but still, you put me and you in this. There's $500,000 worth of prizes for winning this series. I'm not going to work with you. I'm not going to help you at all. It's all for me, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we're seeing them come through the S here, look at that, how close the row is. And yeah, like you mentioned, $500,000. That is not a number that you that you're going to see every single day in a normal motorsports race. Like you mentioned, I raced in go-karts, and if there was a $500,000 prize, I'd be taking out the entire field in turn number 1 for an opportunity at the cash. But my oh my, when it comes to Cadwalder right now, he's able to hold off Guindi, and you were mentioning how they may have had a word to hold this position, so then they have an opportunity to keep Guindi in their sights. But Guindi had a bit of a counter plan as he was coming, I believe, down the Wellington Straight. He was holding the inside line all the way into the grass, and now Cadwalder is going to hold an incredibly defensive line against Guindi. But Sven de Vries isn't there to slot on the inside if Cadwalder is able to back him up. But we might actually see, as I believe we're going to be coming through a few really tight corners. So Sven de Vries looking to the inside there, but he's not going to be able to get it.
He's just trying to unsettle Guindi. Now, look, we've had races where Guindi hasn't led from the beginning in the past. As I think I said, it was at Spa that de Vries was leading for most of it. What de Vries didn't do, which he could have done, was just hold Guindi back and push him back into that battle pack. Get him dug deep down in there, so he can then. Okay, well, you're messing around with all of that. You don't have time to focus on me in the lead, and I can just get away. We've seen Guindy's pace so far. We know he can just, if he wants to flex his muscles, if he gets an opportunity, he will. So the best thing that Cadwalder can do now is use those tight sections, like the first section of the track where Village is, that VR corner we were talking about. Just hold him up. Just push on the brakes a little harder, make it impossible to pass, make the car really, really wide.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really comes down to as soon as he can stretch his arms out a bit, like as soon as he can stretch out and he feels comfortable, there's a bit of space around him, Johnny Guindi just starts sprinting, right? Like you don't want to allow him to do that. So I think for Sven really needs an opportunity to get into the slipstream. And what Cadwalder needs to do is he needs to look at how defensive the line Cadwalder's driving. He's all the way on the inside on the straightaway. That's insane.
Through Maggots and Beckers, which was that, the S's, the long S's before that corner we'd just been through, Stowe just now. Yep. Cadwalder had a bad line. He's slightly buckling under the pressure. He needs to keep it together, because you can be sure that Guindi is an iceman. He never cracks. I haven't seen him crack once so far.
Yeah, and where you just saw, we're just coming into the final, the front straight, but what you just saw is Cadwalder getting hard on the brakes when Guindi was filing back behind, and now Sven de Vries is in the money. He's actually in the draft of Guindi now, so all Sven de Vries has to do is he has to hold the position, but ultimately what these guys really need is they need the likes of Garcia to be side by side with Guindi, because we've seen Garcia basically battling with every single person that he's been near for an opportunity to get a position. So he's been fighting with Short. We just saw him with Saxon. He actually dropped back just a bit now. Yeah, Johnny Guindi is now in behind Cadwalder, and look at the defensive line Cadwalder's going to hold. He's going to drive back onto the racing line, but Johnny Guindi might have an opportunity here to run around the outside for an inside line on the
Good
corner
stuff.
ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's still going to be side by side through Luffield, but look who's joined the party. Sven de Vries has been dangerous in a good way, not in a mischievous way, but he's been there all this season. I think this could be a win for either Cadwalder or de Vries. I've got my fingers crossed.
Yeah, and also with Johnny Guindi too, he hasn't been in the position where he's noticed much risk. And look at Sven de Vries, he's on the back bumper of Cadwalder, and now Cadwalder and Sven de Vries are in the money, bringing the battle to Johnny Guindi. And Johnny Guindi getting touched by Cadwalder there, just with the wheel. But yeah, this is exactly what Johnny Guindi doesn't want, but it's exactly what Cadwalder and de Vries want. They need to get to the inside of Johnny Guindi and go too wide with them on every single corner of the track. And what's mind-blowing here is the fact that Johnny Guindi and Cadwalder are going too wide on the track, are limiting the amount of space, and now we're three wide. We're going 3 wide. Oh, and that's Cadwalder spinning out. Unfortunately, Johnny Guindi and him collected a bit of a rub on the tires, and now it's going to be Guindi falling back and Saxon actually going through. So Guindi and Cadwalder collecting each other and dropping back just a bit. And that was just what I was about to get at, was the fact that Johnny Guindi, they're going too wide and they're incredibly fast on the track, but there's a lot of risk going through running this track too wide, or any track in the world too wide, and it becomes dangerous. But look at Johnny Guindi, even though he had the issue, he's on the back end of Saxon, and Sven de Vries now has to hold his position and try at least to create a gap between him and Saxon in second position so he can run away. But Johnny Guindi, now in third position, who we're on board with now, is in the slipstream. So even though there was a bit of an issue with him and Cadwalder dropping back to 10th position with that spin out, Johnny Guindi now has the draft of Saxon, and he's easily going to be able to hold this and easily going to be able to find himself in second position with the likes of Sven de Vries just ahead of him.
I was going to say, could this be the first race that Johnny Guindi doesn't win in this series? And then, he immediately, I thought, Saxon, not the easiest guy to pass. He drives a wide car, and, he's a fast guy, Nathan Saxon. But Guindi just breezes past him. And there's now 8 tenths, 7.5 minutes remaining. I think that's more than enough for Guindi to play with. De Vries needs to disappear like a rat up a drain pipe right now. Yeah. Perfect every line, every single corner he needs to nail. He knows the pressure. He knows who's behind him. He needs to nail every single apex.
Yeah, and let's talk about the last session, right? Like the last race. It was opposite. It was Cadwalder in second position, with Sven de Vries in third, and then Guindi was in first position. And Guindi was able to find 3 seconds in I believe it was 2 laps in the last few minutes of the race. So if Guindi can do that, this half a second gap between him and the car ahead is easy for him. As we're going to see Cadwalder back in 8th position now, finding himself picking up 2 positions while we've been talking and watching the front of the row. So Cadwalder's not completely out of this. Maybe with this last 6 minutes left, as long as he doesn't find himself battling with too many drivers, as I believe that was Garcia going to the inside. That is the guy that Cadwalder does not want to battle with, is Garcia, because he will bring the battle to you everywhere on this track. So Cadwalder able to get away from
He's got his fists out, doesn't he?
Yeah. So Cadwalder is very lucky not being in the battle just behind that Jablonski's going to be trapped in with Bear and Garcia. And hopefully Bear, if he can hold the position he's in now, he's got a bunch of aggression ahead of him, and potentially with a bit of defensive driving of Jablonski ahead, we might see a bit of a collision here. And if that's the case, Bear's going to find himself in 10th position or 9th.
What was the gap? What was the gap to the lead last time we looked? It was 8 tenths. Look at it now.
Ooh, it's dropping again. It was about.
It's coming down so quickly.
Yep, Johnny Guindi, all he has to do is find that slipstream. We're going to see Garcia potentially going to the outside here on this long sweeping left-hand corner. Following this left-hand corner is a quick right. So if you can keep it to the inside or while you're on the outside, if you can hold that position, you actually get set up for the next corner. And now we're back with the race leader. This is going to be Sven de Vries in first, but Johnny Guindi just in behind. And now we're on board with Johnny Guindi at second position, 7 races in a row with the likes of Sven de Vries ahead of him. We've seen this at Spa before. We've seen Sven de Vries holding first position on Johnny Guindi, but Guindi was able to steal it back. And now maybe a bit of a strategy change for Sven de Vries, as last time he drove a bit defensive a little too early. Should he let Johnny Guindi go by here, or should he hold him off with every single opportunity that he has?
Hold him out through Stowe, hold him out, hold him wide. He's being, no, I guess that was fair. He could have been a bit more aggressive on holding Guindi out, but look, there he is. He's got the corner. I mean, I think, look,
Sven's got the inside though.
He does. That was well held on the inside. Through and Saxon's joining the battle again. It's going to be 3 wide. Oh wow.
This is not.
That was pretty close to the pit wall.
That's not the battle that Sven de Vries wants to be holding. Sven de Vries.
No, but he's come out in front.
That's great. And look at Guindy's back in third position.
Second.
Wow.
It's perfect. You know what? I'm just imagining what it's like to be in Guindy's head at the moment. Why am I not in the lead? Why are these guys trying to taint my perfect record? I'm not having that. He's got 4 minutes left to get to those 2 positions back. He's back in third. This is great stuff.
Yeah, and ultimately, I'm here trying to count cards with the positions on the left side, and it's like the blackjack dealer in front of me is just shuffling quite a bit too often because all of a sudden, Guindi, where I thought he would be in second position or first, he was battling for first a minute ago, and now all of a sudden he found himself in third position, and this really speaks to what we've been talking about. If you battle, the guys behind are going to find pace, and they're going to find a way to catch up to you, because the gap between Kerstetter, who is an incredibly fast driver, and if we see a battle between 3 cars and not 2, Kerstetter also might have an opportunity to find a second. You can see him, he's the car just in the back end of the screen, and if he's able to find pace, we're going to see 4 cars for the battle for first position. And I was mentioning just earlier, Sven de Vries was fighting Saxon and holding a defensive line. And all that Sven de Vries needs to do is hold off Johnny Guindi. But while that battle was going on, Saxon found himself the inside, passing Johnny Guindi as Johnny Guindi was put out into the dirt. And now if Sven de Vries can rely on Saxon to defend against Johnny Guindi, they're going to find themselves in a great opportunity, but that's not going to be happening as we're going to be coming into this right-hand corner. And now Saxon's going to go to the inside, and Johnny Guindi might actually be able to find some pace here and ultimately look to the inside.
Look at him. He's falling back. Oh. He's falling back. And Saxon's come alive in this last part of the race. I mean, look, this is... This is not what we expected at all. I didn't even think Saxon was going to be honestly, I didn't even think that Saxon was going to be in this battle for first and second. We were thinking it was going to be Cadwalder and Johnny Guindi and Sven de Vries, but all of a sudden, Saxon finding himself in a position where now he's basically taken the lead. Not Saxon, but Saxon's taken the second position from the leader, which is going to be Johnny Guindi. And now Saxon's driving to the inside with an incredibly defensive line. Yeah, indeed. Oh, there's that rear view camera. Love it. Love seeing in the head. Look. I mean, this is Guindi. Look, we can see right inside his head. What's he thinking?
Oh, he's the guy. I'm going to go to the inside. But if Saxon can hold it on the outside here, it's actually going to put a bit of pressure on Guindi, and he's going to drop back and look at Kerstetter. He's there. He's left. He made up half of a second. And now if Saxon, who we've seen with incredible pace now in the later bits of this race, if Saxon can continue to pressure Guindi, this is going to be the race for Sven de Vries. Sven just has to not mess this up right now. He just has to be incredibly consistent and hold off for, I believe, is going to be one final lap. He just has to hold off Guindi for one more lap after they come across the line. And Kerstetter and Saxon have to not battle each other for this third position. They have to battle Guindi if they want him to not to have 8 race wins in a row here.
Yeah, and remember, at the end of this race, we're halfway through the season, and again, the prizes for winning in this championship and second and third, and these hard charger, the hard charger prize every round. All of this amounts up to the same value as $500,000. So these guys, you can see why these guys are pushing so hard, and what a story it would be for De Vries to get his first win in this series. He turned 30 years old last weekend. It was his birthday on race day. He's been putting so much into this series, and what a story it is that he could be on for his first win as we go on to the final lap of the race.
Yeah, and ultimately what we've talked about in the series before with the timing, right? Sven de Vries, we have 4 seconds left and he just crossed the line. So he's going to have to finish this last lap. If it was literally 10 seconds less time, he would have been the race winner right there. So the fact that the race is set up the way that it is with this timer, now Sven has another lap that he has to defend against Guindi, and Guindi is right on his tail. All that Sven de Vries has to do is defend as much as humanly possible here, as we're going to see that. But Guindy's going to trap Sven de Vries from driving back to the racing line by holding him down in the marbles. And all Guindi has to do here is drive on the outside, and he's going to have the race lead if he's able to hold it, but he's not.
No. He did, the thing is, what Guindi didn't do, he pulled out of that slipstream too early. He should... Yep. He needed to be a little bit further behind, out of the corner onto the, I believe it's called the Wellington Straight. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. There's one of two big straights, and I always mix them up. Side by side, going into Copse. Again, I mean, these guys are so ballsy. Come on.
Yeah, and the likes of Saxon's just behind with Kerstetter. There's not even a second separating these guys. And now I believe Saxon's going to go to the inside of Johnny Guindi. Johnny Guindy's going to drop back to second. This could be the race for Sven de Vries. Sven de Vries now in first position with the car in between him and Johnny Guindi. Johnny Guindi might be knocked off of his podium position, and his 7-race win record might be held at 7 races instead of 8, as Sven de Vries now in first position with Saxon in between. This is exactly what Sven de Vries wants, but Saxon now in second, just off the back end of Sven de Vries. There is an opportunity, and a opportunity still for Johnny Guindi if Saxon wants the race win. Saxon, do not make contact here with Sven de Vries. You do not want Johnny Guindi coming to the inside.
Guindi on the inside.
Oh my God, Johnny Guindi going to the inside.
He's going to get it as well.
He's going to get his second position, but Saxon's going to cross back over, and it's going to be a drag race as Sven de Vries winning his first race in the Skip Barber eRace series.
Look how happy he is.
A 30-year-old.
Good man. Well done.
Oh my goodness. That is what we were predicting. All that he had to do was hold it off for 1 lap, and Sven de Vries ultimately owing a lot to Saxon in the battle that Saxon brought to Guindi through that race, really putting a ton of pressure on him. And not only that, but Cadwalder trapping Guindi in the beginning of the race and allowing it to be a race and not ultimately another show of pace from Johnny Guindi. But ultimately, Guindi showing his racecraft. He said, you know what, I'm dropping back into third position here, but that's not the end of it. He ultimately picked up a position in the last corner of the track, which is absolutely mind-boggling with the pace that he was able to hold through this race. Oh my goodness, what a finish, Ed.
Johnny Guindi has a fantastic brain for racing. It was damage limitation at that point. He was in third. He was like, okay, let's set this guy up for the last corner, and he pulled it off. But, Elliot, you're Johnny Guindi. Is this race a dent in your armor, this series?
I think that for the other drivers, it proves that Johnny Guindi is not untouchable. It shows that there is an opportunity to win when you guys work together to a certain extent. I don't know if Cadwalder and Sven de Vries and Kerstetter and Saxon all had a discussion and said, hey, you know what, maybe we shouldn't battle throughout this track and we should hold Johnny Guindi to it. But I think if I was in Johnny Guindy's shoes, I know for a fact that if I can battle for first position and I can hold first position, I know that I can run away with it. I know that regardless of what the track is, I've been able to find pace late in the race and gap the cars behind. So I don't think that my confidence is knocked. Obviously, having 7 race wins in a row, regardless of losing this one today, ultimately I'm in a position where I know that I can win and I know that I can hold off the pack behind. But with the series just in general, the points difference for first and second place. First place gets 35 points, second place gets 32 points, third place gets 28 points. So the fact that Johnny Guindi actually didn't finish in third position and was able to pass Saxon actually puts himself in a position where he's still, with that many race wins, he's in a position where it's really, he's holding the championship. So ultimately, Guindi is just in a position where as long as he doesn't fall back to the back end of the row, he is going to be able to hold this position, and it doesn't matter if he finishes first or second position, he's going to win the championship if he can finish in the top three every single time. Ed, how do you feel if you were in Guindy's shoes?
I mean, I suppose I would... a doubt would start to creep in, I think, from that. I mean, you know, maybe I'm being a little bit too dramatic, but right. I guess if it was me, yeah, I think I've been running away with this series, and oh dear. And De Vries he only had the number 4 this round. So, you know, that's another thing I wanted to pick up on. You know, the number 4 car won, not the number 1. The number 8 car came 4th. Number 10 car came 5th. Number 9 car came 6th. So, you know, these are the guys to look out for. Kerstetter came 4th. He was number 8. Short came 5th. He was number 10. Schettini came 6th, and he was number 9. And De Vries, obviously, number 4. He came 1st. These are the guys. They're making use of these sessions with the Skip Barber instructor, Eric Powell. He's one of the most senior instructors in the Skip Barber business, and he knows what he's talking about. He's tapped into this sim so quickly, and he's able to translate all the stuff he knows from real life instruction straight into this. You know, and the stuff he's telling these guys, it translates straight back. They'll learn stuff that they can apply to real life races. So, you know, whoever gets the hard charger prize every week, whoever gets it today, I'm not sure who it is. I'm sure Skip Barber will tell us. But you know, those people, they'll have a test day at Skip Barber, and they can apply the things that they've got one step ahead of other people who, you know, turn up and pay for a normal test day.
Yeah, and I think that when we look at the hard charger, Gomez Jr., I believe he started that race somewhere back between, I believe it was somewhere back near like the 13th position mark, and he was able to find himself a handful of positions, ending up in, I believe that was the top 10. So, man, oh man, the amount of racing that we've seen, that was the closest finish that we've seen in the series thus far. We've seen Sven de Vries ultimately hold off. We've seen him hold off Guindi before, but not able to get that win. So maybe a bit of a transition in the strategy, but ultimately Nathan Saxon in third position in the championship. He's been a dark horse this entire time. We've seen him in a lot of battles, but ultimately he brought it to Sven de Vries, and a lot of respect there from me to Nathan Saxon for not messing that one up for Sven in looking for the race win, because we see that a lot in motorsports. In first place, first or last, brother. And if you don't put it to the inside, if you ain't first, you ain't, or if you ain't first, you're last. So I respect the fact that Nathan Saxon was able to, you know, hold his position and not put Sven in a position where it was either collision or relieving that first position to Sven de Vries. So, yeah. With that being said,
I also wanted to say that, you know, you isolate this race. Is there anything to choose between those 3 at the front of this race?
Oof. I mean,
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I think Cadwalder, seeing him, if he was able to hold that, I mean, we have a top 5 drivers that were all within the same pace. Obviously, if they're able to trap Guindi in their pace and within that battle for first, second, and third position, they have an opportunity. So Cadwalder, Saxon, de Vries, Guindi, and potentially if Kerstetter can get into the mix as well, we have a very close top 5 for the series, and I would really love to see that, and love to see some of these other drivers bring it to Guindi as well.
It's heating up. Looking forward to seeing what the second half brings.
Yep, absolutely. With that being said, this has been round number 4 of the Skip Barber eRace series. My name's Elliot Bishop. I am joined here by Ed this week. We'll probably see Lewis back next week, but Ed, it has been fantastic. Thank you for joining us. You did a fantastic job. Good luck with the races ahead. And thank you guys all for watching. We will see you in the next round of the Skip Barber eRace series. See you next time.